Building your own house is an enormously personal project. It's the ultimate in self-expression, if you like. But this week we're looking at a group of families who are building not only their own, but also each other's houses.
It's May 1998, and the Hedgehog self-build co-op has been up and running for 6 months already. It's a long build, over 2 years, because the families involved are building with their bare hands. 10 houses, 6 of which are already part there. It's hard labour, and they won't even own these houses at the end. They'll belong to their landlords, a housing association.
This is an exciting alternative to the run-of-the-mill social housing in Britain. The families involved didn't want to settle for the usual boring brick and concrete buildings on offer. Instead, what they wanted was something designed with their needs in mind, somewhere where they can live and flourish. They don't want to build just houses, they want to build a community.
Although many of the people on the scheme have some sort of part-time work, each family must commit to 30 hours labour on site each week.
It's as much as people could possibly do, I think, and it's very hard to fulfil those commitments unless you're very lucky with extra childcare and, you know, don't get ill, basically, or, you know, which is... So we're very paired right down to the bone as far as time management. Yes, we have to be very fit.
It's really hard work. It's hard work juggling the hours. We've have to get that ladder now. It's hard work juggling the children and the hours and having the life as well and all that.
There are 10 families consisting of 17 adults, none of whom have built before. The houses are going up just on the edge of the seaside resort of Brighton. And the project is the brainchild of Paul Crouch and his partner Jenny. After several years on the road living in caravans, they decided they wanted a permanent home for themselves and their daughter.
Paul, what motivated you in the first place to get involved with self-build?
Well, I think originally it was the realisation that the way that I'd been living was quite insecure. You know, I'd been living on the road as a traveller, and I had a 2-year-old daughter, and the gradual realisation that as she grew up, she was going to have a lot less opportunity, I think, in life because of the way that I was living.
As a model for their self-build scheme, Paul and Jenny discovered a project in Brighton called the Diggers Co-operative. It was a revelation for them, a community of ordinary families like themselves with little or no money who were building homes not to own, but to rent. The whole thing was being managed and financed by a housing association.
Why didn't you just get a mortgage?
You don't tend to get wage slips when you're picking potatoes in West Wales. So it's quite hard to go to a mortgage company and go, here's my life, it's a bit unorthodox, but I'm a good risk anyway.
Getting the project started was hard work. After a lot of research, Paul found some land which had been set aside for council housing. It's on the edge of the South Downs, 1 mile in from the sea. The site is so steep that it had already been rejected by 2 commercial developers. Paul then had to get the backing of a sympathetic housing association. They purchased the land from Brighton Council for £58,000. He then worked with the association to put the cooperative together with people who were in housing need like himself. They all came from the council's housing list. People like Tony, who's a single parent struggling on a low income with 7-year-old daughter Poppy.
It's a wonderful chance to have a house. I kind of have this vision of Poppy and all the other kids in the self-build having somewhere nice to grow up in, and that drives us all on, I think.
Well, we were being evicted because the person who owned our house was selling it, and that happened again to us really soon after that. We ended up moving 3 times in about, I don't know, 18 months.
We've lived in many places. We've had lots of insecure rental situations. I don't know, I've always just felt like it would be really nice to put down roots, and it's never happened yet. And this was the best one of all the options that we've had in the past, because we're sorting our own housing out.
The design of these houses perfectly suits the steep sloping site. because they rest on stilts and you don't need deep foundations. The system was invented in the 1960s by the architect Walter Segal and was specifically designed with self-builders in mind. Walter Segal's method of self-build is very ecologically sensitive and very simple. Wall panels are made on the ground and erected side by side. Like a house of cards, the structure is then braced diagonally and then the roof goes on. The roofs will eventually be topped with grass, so the development will blur into the surrounding environment. Apart from the concrete plinths, the entire construction is of softwood, which is sustainable. The Hedgehog Co-op have also opted to clad their buildings with native timber, allowing them to individualise their homes with paint and stain. Although the Segal method allows for 2 or more floors, the Hedgehogs have been restricted by the planners to 1 story, which simplifies construction. The windows and doors are timber and double glazed. And the houses are finally dressed with a projecting deck that offers the occupants some private outdoor space, as well as a small garden. And there's also some communal land. Each house will cost £60,000 to build, about the cost of a comparable brick and mortar house. But the difference is that these unusual homes will offer their occupants a quality of life unparalleled on any housing estate. 6 of the houses are up, and the frames are now being made for the last 4 homes. They've got to be finished and clad before the onset of winter. But there are no shortcuts on this site. No flat packs, no kit houses. Every inch of the frame is being made by hand on site. And because they're learning as they go, it's painfully slow. After 7 months working on the other houses, Michael and Donna are finally getting to make the frame for their own home. Donna is 3 months pregnant, but that's not going to keep her away from the build. She's determined to make her own mistakes.
This is my favourite job on the whole building site. I really like doing it, so I was very pleased to be able to do my own. I have messed up one of the joints, but maybe it's better that I messed it up than somebody else. Yeah, it's very good, it's very relaxing.
You know, for the last 6-7 months we've been working on everyone else's house, and all of a sudden you realise you're going to put up your own house fairly shortly. That's quite exciting.
Learning on the job is a slow and often frustrating business. On a project as complicated as a house, you need a guiding hand. So the Housing Association have provided a site manager to oversee the build. For 3 days a week, the co-op have the expertise of veteran self-builder Jeff Stowe.
How are your motley crew?
They're doing really well. They're doing well. I mean, they're doing as well as you can say. It's a very big commitment to expect from people, and they're doing 30 hours a week. I mean, they've got families to bring up, and they're often in quite bad housing anyway, so that puts quite a strain on their lives. So they're doing really well in terms of that.
It's July, and the frames are now ready. With the limited funds they have, the co-op can only afford a crane for 1 day to put them up, so they must get it right. These are the last frames to go up in the Hedgehog build, so not surprisingly, there's a feeling of anticipation and excitement on site. Today, everyone who can has turned up on site to help. But despite the relaxed atmosphere, this is still a building site, not a picnic. Putting up the frames is a serious and dangerous business. The frames simply rest on the concrete beds. There are no fixings. It all seems so simple. Temporary battens are diagonally nailed to the frame to brace it in place.
Are you right in the corner there, Jeff?
I'm pretty good on the line. I'm a little bit out of level.
If they're not secured properly, there could be fatal consequences.
Got to come towards you, locked.
Accuracy is vital. It may be a simple design, but these frames will form the backbone of the houses. They're also very heavy and unwieldy. It needs brains and brawn to get it right. But in all that heavy physical work, and in the sharing of something productive, I can begin to see how these people are forging their community spirit. It's a momentous occasion, and even the children are on site to see the frames of their future homes put into place.
Go! We started at 7 o'clock this morning. A crane came about an hour later. I'm standing now on frame 2 of my house. This is my house. This is a grand moment. I stayed on site overnight, slept in my car, just so I'd be here this morning. Debbie's has gone up, this one, and then next comes Michael and Donna's, and then Paul and Jenny's. That's the last frame to go up. Top of the world. Fantastic.
All right.
This is mine and Donna's house. Very exciting. We've been waiting for about 6-7 months to put this house up, so it's a very exciting day for us all.
All that effort and camaraderie reminds me of those American Quaker and Amish communities who build each other's houses. Put like that, I can imagine Paul playing the part of one of their elders, but his house is the last to go up.
Today we've been putting up the last 4 houses worth of frames, so the site will be at the same level of completion before the winter comes. So everything will be, all the work will be being done inside. It also means that plot 1 is now with frame, which is good. It means that's my house, so it's nice to be able to see my house going up a little bit. Well, I've waited about 5 years, and I'm fairly pleased that my house has been started now. It's got rid of any lingering doubts I might have had about it not happening. Yeah, it's a good feeling. I think we can look forward to the next stage now, where we've got a few weeks' hard work getting the other 4 houses enclosed, and then we've got a winter of inside work, and I think we're doing pretty well to be on schedule with that.
It's been a hard day, but they can now get on with these 4 houses. Still, they've got a long haul ahead of them. But for Donna, her dream house is finally becoming reality. The Walter Segal design of house is the ultimate in building democracy. Anyone who can lift a hammer can build a Segal house. It's cheap and accessible to the most novice of builders.
I've never worked with wood before in my life, apart from cutting it up to burn, or, you know, I'm a welder, and I can work with metal well, yeah. But the idea that it was deliberately designed for people with no sort of existing carpentry skills was very, very attractive, really, on a practical level.
People tend to think that it's something that they wouldn't be able to do. And a friend of mine built her own house, so I used to think I could never do that. But actually, you know, anything's possible, really.
This philosophy that anyone could do it was developed by Walter Segal when building this little house at the bottom of his overgrown garden in Highgate, North London.
Now, this house may not look like much, but it was the start of a small revolution. It was built by the architect Walter Segal as temporary accommodation for his family while their new 6-bedroom house was being built. Segal designed both of the buildings, but it was this little house that really captured his imagination. So much so that, in fact, it led him to completely rethink the way that houses are built. This is really just like a wartime prefab. The other really weird impression is because of these recessed panels and all this exposed timber and the low ceiling and the curve of it having sunk, it's just like a little medieval cottage.
All the materials used for this house, like those at Hedgehog, were bought off the shelf and assembled on site by Segal himself.
The windows are just sliding pieces of glass. There's no hinges, no frames, nothing. Just as you'd expect from a house designed to last just a year or two.
From Highgate to Forest Hill in South London, where Segal explored the idea that if he could build his own home so easily, then why couldn't others? It was here that he was invited to work with Lewisham Council on an experimental self-build scheme.
Just as in Brighton, the people who were building these houses were also the people who were going to be living in them. Sadly, Walter Segal died halfway through building in 1985. But all those ideas that he was working on in that little house at the bottom of his garden, all those ideas, albeit on a larger scale, were developed in these buildings. Once inside, you get a real sense of light and space thanks to all these windows that are here. And what makes that possible is the way that the building is put together. In an ordinary conventional house, it's the walls that are doing all the work. They're supporting the weight. But in a Walter Segal house, it's these great corner posts that are doing it, which means that you can move them about. You can swap them, put windows in here, take doors out there. You can even remove entire sections of the wall and build extensions, like this one, which was put in only, a year ago.
Since 1980, more than 200 houses in the social housing sector have been built using Walter Segal's method. It's a method which gives people skills and it gives them purpose. But 200 houses is just a drop in the ocean compared to all those houses built out of brick and concrete and high-rise buildings used for social housing. One of the joys of Segal's method is that it's quite easy to make adjustments to the build as you go along. Some of the new frames for the 4 houses that are now up on site need to be tweaked so the floor joist can be put in place. We all make mistakes.
I don't know, it's just stuff, isn't it? And it's very, very heavy, but it's only bits of wood, isn't it? So actually you can move it and you can whack it around. And there's something about I don't know, it's like when you're little and you first realise you can break things, I suppose, or you can knock a chair over, do you know what I mean? And before you've always been able to lean up against them or whatever. It's a bit like that, you know. You kind of expect... It's a house, isn't it? It's going to be really, really solid, but, you know, at the moment it isn't. So, yeah, if you hit it with a big bit of wood, it moves. Great.
I hope he knows what he's doing. In fact, the joists will not only support the floor, they'll also brace the frames together, making the whole structure more solid. Small pieces of wood, noggins, are then fitted between the joists to further stabilise the whole structure. There are more than 100 noggins in each house, maybe 1,200 on the whole site. It's laborious, repetitive work and demonstrates that you need more than vision to build a house. You need stamina. This is a real slog. The next rather dangerous job is putting the roof on. The roof joists are made out of recycled wood. They're light, but also extremely strong. That's important because they have to support the weight of tons of soil and turf, which will eventually top the building. Building this way is laborious, but it's supposed to be so easy. Surely even I should be able to do it.
Have you had to learn many skills?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. I still struggle with it, I must admit.
Do you?
Yeah.
Where's this one go?
Put that one here.
OK. You're doing all this by eye?
Kind of.
Kind of.
This is the wall stud work, which will hold the windows and wall panels in place.
So that's every sort of... What's that? Every metre, really, isn't it, more or less?
Yeah.
What about builders' vocabulary? Things like...
I think that would pick up as we're going along.
Things like, we'll be back after lunch.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't understand why the hedgehogs are building in this bitty way. Why not make the sidewalls as whole frames and then lift them into place?
There's 2 or 3 already here. These are the ones you made earlier.
Yeah, and they're in place. This one is...
Right, and there's pencil marks here, so this is...
I marked them up earlier.
Yeah, right.
So I want to put this one...
Slide up there.
Next to this one over this side.
Right, OK. Now, I'm going on the line that's on the bottom rail here, not on the joist, yeah? Because the left on the same principle.
Yeah.
OK, well, that measurement then is 3715.
Well, we'll soon find out if it's wrong, won't we? No, it is right.
Now, do we offer it up?
Let's go for it. OK. This way a bit.
Well, what do you think?
I think that's pretty good, actually.
You reckon?
Not bad.
It's a mirror too short, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll go for
Like
another
about 5 mil short.
I think it'll be all right. Is that lined up?
That is, I'm afraid, to your left slightly. That is lined up. Yes, and?
I think that'll be all right.
You think that's tolerable?
I think that'll be all right. As long as we make sure the other ones fit.
Oh, for God's sake.
Exactly.
That was so barbed.
OK, now, if we leave it there...
Yeah? I'll just stand here, then.
We rest it there.
I'll just stand here.
No, but...
Be a useless
You can
apprentice.
just rest it.
How do you manage on days like today when it's so windy?
I've just realised something. Look,
What?
because this is bent downwards, OK?
Oh, I
Right, it's sagged down, it's slipped down. So if we push it up, where it'll fit that, it will fit.
To relieve the boredom of all that repetitive work, there's always an opportunity to switch tasks for a day or two. As the more developed houses progress, those acres of timber need protecting, and windows that have already been put in need to be painted while the weather's dry. In keeping with the whole build, the co-op are using an eco-friendly product. Each member of the co-op has chosen their own colour. The paint's brushed on and then wiped off to reveal the grain.
This one, I think, is called Natural Spruce, and it's supposed to be about the most transparent one, really. This is Gina's. She's not too keen on the colour now she's chosen it. But she'll grow to love it.
This kind of things, it's like, you know...
It's great that we're going to be living next door to each other.
What's even greater is that all the other women
Everyone.
up here are just amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not like
And men.
it's just a unique thing. I'm moving into my next door, best friend. It's more that they're all our best friends now. We go out on our hedgebirds night out, and have a few shants, and it's not a case of me just knowing her, like we thought it might be. Oh, I'll do it, we'd do it together. It's just turned into an enormous great family. It's fantastic. Couldn't have been more perfect, really. Oh no, I'm great. It's growing on me now.
You like it? I'm glad you like it, because I didn't like it when I first thought. I thought, oh no, Gina.
What you're doing now?
But actually, I like it.
I would say that most of us have come to this scheme as a way of providing ourselves with affordable, secure housing. But the fact that in order to do that, we have to work cohesively as a cooperative, I think has also appealed to people, because you can start to build a community of people, not based on any sort of particularly complex set of understandings, but just the fact that you know that you've built your own house you've built a tenth of 10 houses together. You've been through the same experience.
Because each household has to put in 30 hours work a week, rain or shine, childcare has become a major issue. The creative solution has been to set up a creche on site.
We had to set up the creche because we're all working and none of us have got very much money. Most of us are having to work part-time in order to be able to keep up the hours on the build. So it was just essential that we could organise some free childcare, and this is the way that we thought best to do it. We know that the children are safe, they're on site, and we've got the building to do it in, so it works quite well. It's really good for all the children to be getting to know each other before they move up on site. Some of them are really young, and if they weren't coming up here regularly, I don't think they'd quite understand what was going on, because it's such a long-term project. But because they speak to their hedgehog piglet friends, as the club is called, they're getting much more of an understanding of what's going on up here and why their mums and dads are doing lots of building. And
I want to go curvy bits.
that's the shape of your lips.
Don't want that.
Would you want to go and wipe it off then?
The creche is also used for the more serious business of meetings held by the group. This is co-op democracy at work.
Yeah. Tony, have we heard back from the Butyl roofers?
No, they were supposed to come last Wednesday. They're supposed to drop something off today, the membrane, I believe, and they're supposed to be working tomorrow. So they need chasing up. The
Christmas holidays, we need to decide how much time we're having off and how many hours we're allowed to have for free. What we're going to do is put a sheet up on the board with a list of different options, and we can choose whatever gets the highest vote we do, whether it be a week off or just some hours off, depending on production.
It was decided to open up the steps going down out of the crash, the dodgy, steep, nasty, slippery, horrid.
I was meant to be rebuilding them at some point.
Right. Well, that could happen, but it seems to me it's quite a lot of investment of energy to get you to rebuild those steps when it's not actually
I'd rather be building
essential.
your houses than sorting out your crash steps.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's a better use of you.
Just one other point, which is the wood and the bits of nails, etc. on the site. We agreed ages ago that we'd clear up all around our houses, and it has been done a bit, but not enough. I mean, if you fell through the joists, there's quite a few bits of wood with nails poking upwards. It could be nasty.
The co-op is a legally incorporated body, not some woolly hippie commune. Many of the builders are ex-travellers or have pursued alternative lifestyles, but this is no freebie. It's their only hope for a decent, secure home.
It's very important to have a Land Rover to tow my caravan. So I spent all my time and effort and money and love and all sorts of things on this vehicle. The time has come to sell it through being extremely broke, which is a bit of a problem. Mostly to do with the fact that you can't really have a full-time job and build a house for 30 hours a week. So as a family, we've become very poor over the last year and a half, and that's where it's come to now, selling your possessions to keep yourself going till the end of the build. It's important that everybody realises that you do have to make sacrifices to do this kind of thing.
And keeping to 30 hours work a week is proving almost impossible for single-parent Tony because there's no one to share the work with. If he can't catch up, he could even lose his house and all the investment of time he's put in.
Have you fulfilled your quota so far? Is that?
I got very badly behind at one stage, and I'm catching up. I was 100 hours behind, now I'm only 50.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah. It's around 3% of the sum of the build hours that you put in. I got in that situation because it was so difficult to attain the 30 hours a week in the first place, and so it's very hard to make them up.
So are you working as well at the moment?
It wouldn't be possible to. There's no time in the day in between working here and looking after a kid. It's everybody finds it very tight. I mean, the people that are working, the couples, they can just about manage it, but
the single parents just find it impossible.
Yeah, it just wouldn't be possible.
So you end up being entirely wedded to this project.
It'd be all right if you got paid for it, like an all builder does, I suppose.
And the winter's coming as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the girls said that last winter was quite easy because you were all enthusiastic and new to the project, but this one's going to be hard.
Yeah, the novelty's wearing off now a little bit.
The Housing Association have sent their clerk of works to inspect the site. The co-op have to meet weekly targets set for them, but they're falling woefully behind as the project loses more and more momentum.
Well, the construction is very good. We've got no problems whatsoever, and I'm very impressed with the way it's been constructed because there is no one basically trained in the building industry. So I'm very impressed. My only concern is the speed of construction. I think they'll be far more advanced than we are at the moment.
Probably about the same player.
The speed of the build is further hampered by the fact that some co-op members keep changing their minds about how the houses should be laid out. The design does allow this, but they ought to have made their minds up after 1 year.
Are you changing the design of this?
We're considering it, yes. My main concern is that it might mean going back to the planners.
So this design method gives you the opportunity to fiddle around with the...
Yeah, but also because it's the self-builders that are building the houses, it's very hard for them to fully understand what the place is going to be like just from the plans, and so they kind of agree at the planning stage, but then when they actually see the layout, they say, well, I don't really want that, could we do that? And then, if the option's there, some things they definitely can't do, but some things have to remain possibilities.
Right, so what are you going to do? You're going to enclose this...
That's what they want to know, if it's
area.
possible to do, to give them that space as a living room space rather than a veranda.
It's November. Winter approaches, and this cladding should have been on in the summer. It looks flimsy, but like every part of the building, it's designed to further brace and stabilise the existing structure, like a drum skin. More nails are banged in, and a few more. It's awkward and uncomfortable work, and not very popular with the builders. By this stage, the glamour has certainly worn off. They're all working slowly and are now up against their own lack of experience. They're also hampered by the changing weather, up against a tight schedule, and in desperate need of funds which need to be released by the Housing Association to pay for subcontractors.
There's come a point now where we have to start spending a lot of the money that we have allocated for subcontraction, which is a little bit of a scary thought because we haven't got enough money for subcontraction as yet. And if we start spending it now, it won't be there later. But if we don't spend it now, then there won't be a later.
The Housing Association have agreed to release just enough money to pay for a carpenter. Matty has now joined as a contract worker on the build. Personally, I think having him is something of a drop in the ocean. It's December, and the co-op members are hoping that Matty will help give the build new momentum. So he's got his work cut out for him. Whatever happens, they've got a tough winter ahead. The co-op have allowed themselves some hours off over Christmas and have organised a party to take their minds off the build. But there's little Christmas cheer for Tony. He's under huge pressure, making up the hours he's missed. As the nights are drawing in, they're all having to work in the dark and cold for the build to remain on schedule. It just doesn't let up. With temperatures below zero, it's just the weather for hitting a frozen finger with a hammer. The build is now taking on the challenge of an Arctic trek. Arduous, slow and cold. This is not an easy way of getting a house.
All over feeling, all over feeling.
With so much work to do on site, no pair of hands are ever left idle.
You're right there, Matthew.
Hey, mate. Yeah, get a hand with this window, will you? Carry it down the bottom of the site.
Haven't you got enough labour here?
Well, they're all busy, aren't they, at the other end? They're all busy in plot one.
How heavy is it?
It's not.
Is it not? No, it's heavy enough.
You can do it.
Which way?
That way. This way. It's only certain temperatures that it gets like.
This is one of the last windows to be fitted in Debbie's house, and is going into her daughter's bedroom.
Look what we brought you, look.
Hey, my window.
Nice and shiny and new.
Debbie's a single parent whose house was one of the last to go up.
Well, it's good at the bottom.
There's about 2 or 3 mil here on this that I didn't notice before.
Well,
it's catching.
I reckon there's still a long way to go at the top.
Catching just here.
Might just bounce it with this.
It's at times like this that Matty's expertise becomes invaluable.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's it. You're in. You're in.
Hit it down the bottom.
Yeah.
There, yeah.
It's February, and inside number 10, the wall cavities are being filled with insulation made from recycled paper. All your old newspapers are taken to a factory in Wales where they're shredded and have a fire retardant added. New homes in the UK are the worst insulated in Northern Europe. But here at Hedgehog, the builders are addressing this with up to 300 millimetres of insulation. Once it's in, the rooms are ready for plasterboarding. The project's been underway for 14 months, but there's nearly a year of hard work ahead before any of the families can move in. Spirits are flagging, so I've decided to try and give the Hedgehog Co-op a boost.
This is number 10, Hedgehog Terrace, that's Hedgehog build, which is ironic, really, because it's actually going to be the first one to be finished. Now, since these houses are taking 2.5 years to build, all told, we thought it would be a very good idea if we could see one entirely finished, which means decorating it on the inside, which is down to me.
But before I can start decorating, the house has to be finished. So it's all hands on deck to get the internal walls in place and ready for my scheme. While everyone's left working on the house, I'm off furniture hunting.
Now, if you've spent 2 years putting your life on hold with no earning potential while you build your house, you're going to be pretty strapped for cash by the time it's built. So it's clear that our hedgehog show home is going to need to be decorated on a very tight budget. I've come to this furniture warehouse just outside Brighton that belongs to Emmaus. It's a charity run by people who were formerly homeless. It's just the kind of place to find some hedgehog household gems. Well, that's more like it. That's a rather nice, sort of Swedish-looking design, this. What we're going to try and do with this house is, instead of, as you would normally, designing the whole space and then finding the furniture to fit in it, what we're going to try and do is start with the furniture, assemble a small number of pieces that have a look about them, and then design the room around them. Now, this is the kind of thing I'm looking for. This is straight out of Harold Wilson's 1960s. It's a sideboard, very unfashionable now, but actually a beautifully made piece of furniture. It's got ash veneer, rather attractive wooden handles, bit of marquetry, and if it's cleaned up, it could be a very beautiful piece of furniture. Oh, look. Icons of the 60s cocktail sets. These are soda streams. Great things, great shapes. I think I can put these to good use. Just watch.
With the furniture chosen, I really ought to turn my attention to the overall design.
I'm not a fan of TV decorating makeovers. I was hoping I'd never have to do one, in fact. But here I found myself about to embark on one, although I suppose it's not really a makeover, is it? It's a start over.
This is assuming they've finished putting in the walls.
Shop. Hello, Paul. Ben, how are you?
All right.
Good. There's a notice out there that says tape jointers well done.
Yeah.
This looks great.
That cost a lot of money.
Well, now that you're all gifted amateurs, isn't there a danger that, you know, because you're not professional plasterers and prepared just to come in and just tosh it out, that, you know, that you're just being too perfect about it. You're being too, you know what I mean?
Well,
too
yeah,
loving
I do.
and too caring.
I mean, I think that's part of the problem that we've had all the way along in every aspect of the build is, you know, not so much that we're kind of insanely perfectionist about it, but that not having a background in building, we don't really know what's acceptable. Do you know what I mean? We don't know what the tolerances are.
You don't know what the parameters are. You don't know when it stops
you know,
being merely acceptable and just starts being rough.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've ended up spending more time doing a better job than needed to be done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, apart from this one frame, it's all boarded out now. Floorboards are down. They look very nice. They're pine. It looks smaller than when I saw it last because this wall's gone in. But nevertheless, it's still a sizable house.
The first thing I want to do is sketch out the dimensions of the room and see where the furniture can fit in. A necessary step because I'm having to make do with what I've found and design around it. The object isn't to decorate and accessorise the room as if it were someone's home. Rather, I want to make a kind of template, a simply decorated structure, including paint, lighting and a few furnishings that could inspire the hedgehogs and help them imagine what their own, no doubt highly individual homes will look like. As I sort out the interior of the house, the co-op are pulling together to get the exterior of the show home looking good. Now that means getting a turf roof. Because the lorry's been unable to make it up the hill, the turf is having to be unloaded into Tony's car to be transported to the house. Well, that's the idea anyway.
I'll be in touch.
The grass roof gives everyone an idea of how the house will look in the end. But I don't have time to watch the grass grow. I've got to get decorating inside.
Now, the walls. I did think of papering them, but we discounted that on grounds of cost more than anything else. And so we've opted for paint. And in keeping with the hedgehog co-op philosophy, I've got green paint, that is sustainable paint, not green in colour, it's actually a sort of pale mauve in colour. This is a paint which is made out of the usual things, pigments like china clay and chalk and iron oxide, which give it the colour. But what's specifically green about it is the binder, which is made out of latex. That's from a rubber tree. But the point about it really is that it goes on like a dream.
The colour scheme is simple. 2 shades of pale, slightly muddy mauve that are almost off-white. I'm painting alternate walls in the 2 shades to subtly emphasise those interesting changes of planes in the room. But I'm not going to paint the furniture. The wood is far too beautiful to hide. Just a quick scrub up with wire wool, a wash down, and a wax will do the trick.
If there's one idea that this scheme embodies, it's that you can decorate on a ridiculously cheap budget. We've got second-hand furniture from Emmaus, which we've lovingly polished and revivified back to its original condition, and that looks fantastic in this setting. It looks very appropriate, it's very minimal, it looks very Swedish, it looks very, 1960s, retro, whatever you want to call it, but it looks good. We've also got just great sheets of rice paper here, which I've just literally stuck onto a batten, and they hung on the wall in place of pictures. They cost just £1 or so. We've got light fittings which cost £2.50 from an agricultural suppliers that we've sprayed with car paint. We've got table lamps that I've adapted from the siphons that I bought at Emmaus and stuck some shades on the top and sprayed those down. I think they look very funky and contemporary. And for decoration, for accessories, instead of expensive accoutrements from high street shops, we've got stuff that we picked up off the beach. Things like this great lump of driftwood that's still damp from this morning. And pebbles. There you are. What do you think? Sort of East meets West, beachcomber, eco-retro, soft minimalism look-ish?
The hedgehog philosophy is that no one can move in before all the houses are finished. Besides, this is just a show home for hedgehog living. The small bedroom has one sunshine yellow wall. The large bedroom has one lavender wall. It's a way of introducing a strong colour to a room. By painting each wall a different shade, I emphasise the interesting shape of the living room. A few homely touches. The 50s kitchen table gave me the blue wall colour. And I found an office cupboard that looks as though it could be a designer label wardrobe. Almost. Excluding the kitchen, the furnishings cost £580. This house may still be short of a veranda, but it is, as architects say, well-mannered and entirely appropriate for a coastal setting. But not many people would be prepared to spend 2 years building their home. This project might seem an extraordinary thing to do to get a secured tenancy, and going to rather extreme lengths to get to know your neighbours. These people feel it's their only option, but I can't help wondering if they still feel it's worth it.
So what do you think then?
I think it's pretty good. Really
It's very different to your house, isn't it? At the moment.
Yeah.
Have you got the floor in yet?
No, ours is a shell at the moment, isn't it?
I haven't even got a floor down, it's just joists everywhere, so...
It's inspiring to see it like this, isn't it? Because it just makes you really want to get on and get it finished and... Yeah,
well, it doesn't depress you.
Not at all, not at all.
Because sometimes you lose track of what you're doing, really. You come up here every day and hammering nails in and stuff, and you sort of lose track of it. It's actually going to be somewhere to live and to spend your days.
How has it been the past year, 2 years, whatever it is? I mean, you've got your hands full, haven't you two?
We have.
With this lot.
We've got our hands full with this lot.
It's been totally manic, and we're completely exhausted almost all the time because we're trying to fit so much in.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's worth it. You can see it's a beautiful place. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. This is, probably the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. Most commitment. whoever had to anything, and it should have a payoff, a house, a permanent house for Poppy to grow up in.
What have you got out of this build?
Well, I'd like to continue with carpentry, actually. I want to carry on.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
So now you've got the body of skills together, you want to take it somewhere, and because you've got builder's hands there.
I do, yeah.
Look at them.
That's one of the consequences, actually, of building a house.
Eventually, when it's done, I can look towards maybe more education and a job at the end of it, and some money. Wow. I remember that stuff.
So would you do it again?
Build a house? I'd have to have a really, really good reason for doing it again.
Yeah.
Actually.
I wouldn't want to do it again.
I don't want to see a saw, I don't want to see a hammer or a set square or a carpenter's pencil, do you know what I mean?
We feel like we've built now. We've done that one. Do something else. There's lots more to do, isn't there?
But I think we'd do it again, wouldn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but not for ages. Not
for years.
Like when we're really old, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
As long as we can pick up a hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens to this amazing cooperative, this group? What happens to all these relationships when you move in? Because everything's going to change. I mean, you'll be neighbours then, not a working party.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I can't help but think that we could probably all deserve a break from each other a little bit when we've finished, and obviously the fact that we're not going to be involved in what is essentially a building firm together anymore will be good for our sense of distance and our sense of individuality. It has been a tremendous amount of hard work and will continue to be until all the houses are finished and the site's landscaped, and we've got to move in, and there's a lot of hard work to come, but I'm sure it will have been worthwhile at the very end of it, because the things that I've gained from it, I don't know how you'd actually go out and you couldn't buy them. It's a tremendous experience.
This is one of the most exciting self-builds I've seen. It's not the most groundbreaking of designs, but in environmental terms, it's sustainable, and it is a method of build that anyone can do. But of course, it requires a fantastic commitment over years, not weeks or even months. And I keep having to remind myself that these people are not the owners of these buildings. They're just renting. If the words grand design suggest anything, it's that a house isn't just a building, it represents an ideal, a dream. These people got together just to put a roof over their heads, and in doing that, they're managing to build houses, build a community, and build a future.